And today I'm asking the question, can sex and spirituality coexist? And I think traditionally these are not two words we necessarily put in the same sentence. But I think as the world changes, as new modalities come to light, we're starting to see that perhaps these two things not only can coexist, but should coexist. Now, this is something I am not an expert on, and so I am very grateful to be asking Prema Gaia to answer this question. And a little bit about her. She is a transformational mentor for trauma-sensitive leaders, soul-led entrepreneurs, and her own story is remarkable. She went from being a model in LA to becoming a full renunciate and wandering the world, and spent over the last 20 years she's traveled collecting tools and knowledge and wisdom from some of the most extraordinary teachers all over. And now, of course, she's taking what she's learned and translating that in a way to help as many people as possible. And she's been featured in international publications and big popular wellness platforms like Sage and Insight Timer and Spirituality and Health. She's taught in Levette with us as well. And one of the things I so love about her is that while she is obviously has been profoundly devotional and spiritual, as she'll say, she was celibate for 5 years, she'd shaved her head, her journey to weaving back sensuality and sex into spirituality is so profound, and really something that she really has walked that talk. And so I'm excited to share this conversation with you and her beautiful answer to this question, do sex and spirituality belong together?
So I would love to begin our call by just inviting the listeners to take 3 deep breaths into their hearts. So I'd love to invite you to put your hand over top of your chest and just feeling your hand over top of your heart, and just feeling yourself fully landing in your body and coming into this present moment, and taking 3 deep breaths all the way into the center of your heart. And exhaling with a sigh, letting go of anything that has come so far today. And let's do 2 more like that. Big breath into your beautiful heart. Exhaling, letting go of the day. And 1 more deepest and most self-loving breath that you've taken so far all day. And big audible exhale. Beautiful.
Oh, thank you so much for starting us so beautifully, Prema Gaia, and for jumping in with me today on a subject that, I think lots of people have question marks around. And I know 2 words that aren't normally put together, which is sex and spirituality. And, I know in your incredible diverse background and experiences that you have traversed both of these realms independently, but also found a way to kind of like sort of put them in the room together and really have a kind of coherent, beautiful integration. And so very excited that you have so kindly decided to share one of the tools that you've been teaching around this for so long. So I would love to hear what's one of the ways that we can use, I guess, like sex and spirituality together.
Absolutely. I would be honored to share. And so a little bit about my background. I went on a spiritual vision quest for several years, studying the world's wisdom traditions and healing arts. And along the way, I was studying many different practices from many different traditions, healing practices and spiritual practices. And I was celibate for several years along the journey, and I had no idea that so many of the healing and spiritual practices that I was studying independently were actually part of sacred sexuality and tantra, and could actually create a more profoundly intimate, healing, connected, and transformational, and even transcendent experience of sexuality with a beloved, with a partner.
I love
And
that. And it's funny because like I think so many people, I know I did for the longest time, were like, well, if you're spiritual, you can't be having sex because
yeah,
there was this idea of like the nun or the monk or the like you have to retreat from society, retreat from pleasure, retreat from your body. And just of course in modern society, the shame and the stereotypes about sex as being in some way sinful, and so I love hearing that, on this amazing quest around the world with different traditions, that you found that no, actually at the heart in all of these traditions, there is a space for this sacred sex that you talk about.
Absolutely, absolutely. And that so resonates what you were sharing about this inquiry that so many of us who have been devoted to a spiritual and healing path have been in around, some of us have read these different yogic texts or Vedic texts or Buddhist texts that talk about, the fastest path to liberation is the path of renunciation and perhaps celibacy or living this austere life. And so I remember being really torn at certain phases of the journey, going to these different meditation retreats and wanting so deeply to liberate myself so that I could live my full, vibrant, joyful potential, and hearing these ancient wisdom teachings and trying to figure out how they fit into our modern world. And so what I discovered over years and years of exploration is that sexuality and spirituality absolutely go hand in hand. Our bodies are the vessels that house our shining spirits. Our bodies are the bridge between the earth plane and all of the healing and magical, beautiful energies here on earth, and also source and all of the illuminating, uplifting energies. And so our bodies can literally be utilized in a space of reverence and deep intentionality as vessels for the healing energies of the earth to circulate up through our channels and opening up to divine energies and beautiful healing frequencies that are far greater than anything we could ever experience on our own independently. And so
which we never learned in sex ed.
Like I never learned that at all. Sex ed in high school was very sad. Sex in high school was a very sad scenario. It was very, non-illuminating class. So after several years of celibacy, and I even had a shaved head, and I gave away all of my possessions because I was so devoted to this exploration around how can I liberate myself from suffering? How can I liberate myself from imprinting? How can I liberate myself from ancestral trauma and all these pieces? So I was so dedicated that I shaved my head and lived as a renunciant. After that period in my life, I had the blessing of encountering several people and a couple of beloveds who also had a very devotional nature like I did, and who had also studied many wisdom traditions. And through connecting with these partners, we basically started creating and channeling these recipes for sacred sexuality rituals that could really merge that energy of devotion and honoring the divinity in each other and honoring our beautiful, tender, courageous hearts, and bringing all parts of ourselves, allowing all parts of ourselves to be welcome, including the tender parts that have incurred trauma in our lives are also welcome in sacred sexuality. The vulnerability, the tenderness, the authenticity, that's all welcome in sacred sexuality. And so it's really about inviting and welcoming all parts of your beloved, your partner, into the space, as that is all parts of them make up the beautiful body temple that houses their spirit, and all parts are deserving of attention and reverence and adoration. And so I have 11 steps that I want to share with you. And I know that we have a short conversation window here, so I want to get right to it. And so the first step for co-creating a ritual, and I will say, this is the kind of thing that you will want to do with someone that you have a deep soul connection with. This is not something that you would embark on casually. It's something that you would do with a partner where you've already developed trust, and you've already created a bond between you, and you feel an authentic soul connection with that person. Because creating a sacred sexuality ritual or a tantric ritual with someone is inherently quite bonding. So you're going to want to be really choiceful and discerning. And I also wanted to share, just for those who are listening and are thinking about, maybe writing writing some of these steps down. The whole PDF for this ritual is going to be included in the show notes. So you can just listen along, and you don't have to write anything down. It'll all be available to you in the show notes. So the first step one, is creating and preparing your sacred space. So I encourage people to create a beautiful sacred space where you have at least 3 hours to create this very special ritual ceremony together. And if possible, that you can sleep overnight so that you can really integrate the following morning. Perhaps for some people, this is the first time they've treated sexuality in a ceremonial or ritual context. And so it may open some really deep portals of deepened intimacy, connection, even healing, and what I like to call, crygasmic healing experiences, where it can really go to some very deep places. So if you can create a container of at least 3 hours, set your sacred space with candles, incense. You might want to use some holy oils like frankincense, rose, or sandalwood. You might want to create a platter with some raw chocolates and berries to feed your beloved. And then you'll want to choose some nice, beautiful, kind of grounding, relaxing, sacred music. And I'll share resources to a music playlist also at the end of the call. But setting the space so it feels like a sacred space, like candles, beautiful music, beautiful lighting. And you might want to go to a special place, like rent an Airbnb or go somewhere where there's really a good level of sound privacy. So you can really make as much noise and sounds and sounds of delight and joy and pleasure as you like, without having to feel like you have to attenuate your sound. So that is step one. With setting your sacred space, when your partner, your beloved, comes into the space, you'll want to greet them in a beautiful, deeply present way. So you may wish to take some sage or palo santo, which are these beautiful herbs that help to cleanse and clear the space. And you can each take turns saging or using palo santo, and just setting the intention that that sacred plant supports in clearing anything out of your beloved's energy field that they no longer would need to be carrying, any old energies, any old hurts, or any old experiences. That sage or that palo santo clears that out of the space fully, so that anything that your beloved no longer needs to be carrying can be released before you enter into the sacred space together. And then you take turns and then ask them to do the same. And you really invoke the spirit of that plant to come and support you, the spirit of that sage or the spirit of that palo santo, to help you clear out the space and really create a beautiful field for the ritual that you're about to embark on together.
I love that. And I just want to remark that, again, like, I know this is so normal for you, but I think about how we don't tend to treat sex as a ceremony. I can see these first 2 steps really setting it up as a ceremony, right? So already, see, I can feel the different type of flavor to, like, often when people are like getting ready for sex, they're drinking or they're numbing themselves, or they're, there's like, we often go the other direction. So this beautiful intentionality. So that I'm very excited by that. Step 1 and 2 sound amazing. What's step 3?
So, and then the next piece on step 2 is also anointing your beloved's chakras, or you could even just anoint their forehead, anoint their heart chakra, just a couple of places if you like, their third eye and their heart, or you could anoint all 7 of the chakras with a holy oil, something like rose or frankincense or sandalwood, with the intention of bringing that beautiful, pure plant essence energy into each of their chakras, just to be present with them, to help open their energy centers, and really treating all of their energy centers, their heart, their third eye, their crown, with reverence. And so step 3 is intention setting, gratitude, and ritual opening prayer. So depending on what feels true for you, I really invite you to make the ritual your own, taking a moment to set an intention. And for myself, I would like to start with a simple prayer. It's not a religious prayer by any means, but it's a kind of prayer like, Great Spirit, all of life, thank you so much for the privilege of being here with this beautiful beloved whom I cherish and appreciate so deeply. Thank you for allowing us to co-create this sacred and healing space together. Please bless our time together for the most uplifting outcome. Thank you. Aho, or something simple like whatever is true for you. So make it your own and make it feel true for you. And then taking a moment to set intentions. So you each take turns sharing what your deepest intention is for that container together. It might be around deepening your connection, or getting to know each other on a heart level even deeper, or honoring and really adoring each other with healing touch and healing energy. So whatever is true for you, that step 4 is some form of
Is it you can have, each person can have their own intention, or you're creating an intention together that you both share?
So again, with that kind of thing, it's whatever feels true for you both in that moment. If you feel like you'd like to each set into an intention, then you can do that. And if you feel like you'd like to share a joint intention, that also works beautifully. I really want to encourage everyone to make the ritual your own, make it feel completely true for you.
To choose your own adventure. I love it.
Choose your own adventure. Exactly. And so step 4 is practice circular breathing together. So many of you on the call will have heard of circular breathing or know about qigong or some of these breathwork techniques where you breathe through the central channel. So basically, the man will breathe from his crown down from the top of his head through the central channel in the center of his body, and then out the lingam. The lingam is the Sanskrit word for penis, and then sending that energy, visualizing it like golden light coming up through the woman's yoni. Yoni is the Sanskrit word for vagina, and then she breathes up that energy and then breathes it out her crown and then goes back into the man's body. So circular breathing together for about, whatever feels right for you, 3 or 5 minutes or a little more, and just eye gazing and really, really dropping in together. It's a beautiful turn on to just be that unmasked and vulnerable and present. So circular breathing together to really just drop in and ground and center and connect yourselves energetically before you dive in to the ritual. And so the next step after that,
like if that's new for somebody with the breathing and the eye gazing, at this point, like, would you suggest, like, this is when you have your music, this is when you're sitting in your space, is there any suggestions you have for someone who's trying it for the first time, who might feel some discomfort or a little nervousness about doing that?
yeah, if it feels a little awkward, you could just try breathing together with your eyes closed for a couple minutes. Like just say, let's just sit and breathe together for a couple minutes just to really center ourselves, bring all of our attention fully here and ground so that we can really be fully present for this ritual that we're about to create. So you could do it with your eyes closed and you don't have to do the circular breathing, but it's really lovely to drop in and breathe together to quell any nerves, to really come into your body and to ground
And
before.
that intimacy, like, I think the intimacy of looking eye to eye is really amazing.
Yeah. So
it takes some practice. I remember the first few times I did this, I was like, it was definitely very, like you said, you feel so unmasked, which is part of what creates the intimacy, is the vulnerability and revealing yourself to the person you love and you trust. But it's beautiful to have, like, maybe like that baby step for anyone who is doing this for the first time. You try it that way first and then try the circular breathing and the eyes open, which is so worth it.
Yeah. Yeah. And maybe if if you like, you can feed each other a little raw chocolate bonbon or something as you're, just to kind of give yourself the sweetness and that, that extra element of, the taste sense door being open. And so, making it feel good and juicy and fun for you. So the next step is called giving and receiving. And at that point, you decide who will be giving and who will be receiving during that ritual. So it's really nice to have one person be the receiver and one person be the giver, so that the person who's the receiver can just really drop in and receive. And then on another evening, at a later time, the other person can switch and be the receiver. So I recommend doing one evening one person is the receiver, and then a following evening, another person receives. And so the next step is full body tantric massage. So this is a practice where you can use beautiful organic coconut oil or another edible oil and just massaging your beloved's entire body with sensual, deeply attuned touch before going to the genital area. So really focusing on the whole body. And then sometimes you can do a combination of one body part and the genitals at the same time, but it's really about including the whole body and sharing your healing touch with them and helping them to deeply relax. And if you'd like to watch some videos that teach about tantric massage and sacred sexual massage, I'll be sharing some resources for that as well. I have a playlist, a couple of playlists on YouTube that I'll be sharing. So,
of course you do. Who doesn't have a couple playlists of tantric?
we collect these things. And so, yeah. And then the next step after that is heartfelt devotion, healing vibrations, and words of affirmation. So I invite you to think about a mantra that will hold really loving, beautiful energy that you can recite to your beloved. And in the PDF that I'll be sharing, there are some traditional Vedic mantras. The man one is Tat Pranamami Sada Shiva Lingam. It's a mouthful, so you don't have to memorize that. You definitely don't have to memorize that. I can't even say it. So anyway, there's some from Sanskrit you could use if you feel to, but otherwise you could just choose something simple like, "You are so cherished. You are so beautiful. I'm so honored to be here with you." And you can repeat that to your beloved as you're massaging them, as you're adoring them. And, if you want to get creative, you could even sing healing sound frequencies into their genitals. You can even, you can sing devotional music, devotional songs to them. You can repeat different mantras. You can do different sound healing or overtone singing, all kinds of any healing art that you utilize. I've seen some of my friends do didgeridoo sound healings in tantric rituals. You can get creative with it, but anything that feels juicy and authentic and special and sacred for you, you can include in your sacred sexual ritual. But for myself, what I've experienced is I've had a lover sing a full devotional song of the 108 names of the Divine Mother into my yoni, which was very, very, very healing, just honoring and reverencing me as an embodiment of the Divine Mother. And for me, that catalyzed a lot of tears, a lot of healing, a lot of like, wow, this is so touching. So those kinds of things can really catalyze the next step, which is called deepening intimacy and emotional release. So some of these elements might catalyze in your beloved some tears, or what I call a crygasmic release, where it's like, wow, this person is honoring me so beautifully that it's alchemizing any old experiences that I've had of trauma or being not reverenced in the context of sexuality. You're basically bringing this beautiful healing balm to this context where it hasn't always been treated with such reverence and intentionality. So if that is the case, that there's some tears that happen, or even a big emotional release, I really want to invite you to create the space for that and allow your beloved to know that they're fully safe to cry, to release, and that it's an honor to witness them and to hold space for them to release any old tears that are ready to be released. It's a very, very beautiful thing. So
that's definitely a gift. And again, like, so different to so much of the sexual narrative we are taught and we hear in terms of what is allowed or acceptable in a space, right? And I so appreciate that this container and these steps that you've created really do allow for the whole person and all their experience and whatever is coming up for them. It's so beautiful.
Yeah, I really experienced sexuality as a ceremony, and it's like a plant spirit medicine ceremony, but the sacrament in a sacred sexuality ritual, the sacrament is the Shakti. It's that sacred feminine life force energy. So rather than drinking a tea or taking a certain entheogen, the sacrament is the Shakti, and it works through us and catalyzes through our body and our energy field like a psychedelic sacrament. And I have experienced, spontaneous DMT visions in a sacred sexuality context. And I know that that's pretty common, that our body can naturally secrete DMT when we allow ourselves to go into this ceremonial, reverent, sacred space with our beloved. It's incredible what can happen. And with the cryogasmic releases that can happen, it's so transformational and healing that anything, when you're releasing and your partner's right there with you, it can catalyze this beautiful like oxytocin share, where it's like everything that's happening for you, your pleasure is immediately transmitted to them, and your healing and all the magic and the alchemy that's happening is circulating between both of you. You're both sharing it. You're in this alchemical ambrosia energy. It's really, really, really transformational what can happen. And so the next step after that is additional ritual and puja elements. So you can do different libations or offerings to your beloved. You can pour different edible oils over their genitals, or mango juice, or rose water, and just washing with warm water after every libation that you offer. And then also you can take a candle or an incense and light it, and just bring it in a circle around their face as if you are honoring a deity. That's a really sweet and touching thing that you can do if it feels true for you. And then at the end of that puja element of your ritual, you can, if it feels true for you, you can bow before them, bow or prostrate. Some people even will bow on the floor, completely laying down on the floor in front of their beloved, as a way of just honoring how exquisitely beautiful that person's soul is. And so whatever feels true and authentic for you, but I think it's really, really touching gesture. And so the next step after that is, I think we're getting right to the end here. The next step is called ascending to the peak together. So from that place, you can go back into adoring your beloved with your hands or orally, and then building a series of ecstatic peaks and then gentle relaxation, but without penetration. So you're building the energy and then going back into relaxation and very slow massage, and then building up the peak. And where at a certain point, your beloved will be begging for you to merge with them in ecstatic union. And then eventually you will go into joining together in lovemaking after having built up the peak arousal, and then going back into gentle relaxation and slow massage several times. It really builds up the energy in an exquisite way.
And isn't that such a different model? Like, I'm thinking about how we're used to going from zero to orgasm is what we're like the kind of the traditional race to get there as quickly as possible. And like this, the versus idea of like playing with arousal and building arousal through waves. And like, I just think it creates such a beautiful sense of, I guess, like the intimacy and the energy. And I'm so curious about that. I know, again, like this is such a different playbook to what we were taught. This is not the kind of foreplay that we ever grew up watching on TV, and certainly not seeing in porn. Do you know what I mean? And I just love that description. So it sounds so yummy and delicious. I'm like, no wonder you need 3 hours.
Well, I mean, sometimes you can go on for like 8 hours, depending, there's certain, it can definitely go on for, you can extend it to like 2 days if you want. So if you have availability to do that. So, but yeah, when I first encountered this way of, approaching sexuality as a ritual, as a ceremony, as a prayer, if you will, I felt like the bar had been raised onto a ladder in another dimension. And it felt like that in my body, in my heart. It was like in my orgasms, in my, it just felt like multidimensionality, shamanic, ecstatic, basically like touching the stargates, like going to higher realms with your beloved. Just extraordinary what's possible. Absolutely extraordinary, and so healing, and such an honor. And I believe and feel very deeply that it's to be approached with deep humility and reverence. because anything we're invoking the divine, we're invoking great spirit. So approaching it with deep humility, reverence, and a spirit of gratitude and devotion. So, and the next step of the ritual is really merging and connecting deeply with your beloved in lovemaking, and really allowing the sounds and the pleasure sounds and the, the ecstatic groans and moans and squeals of delight to be as loud as they would like to be. And so making sure that you're in a container where that's possible, because when you make those sounds of pleasure and ecstasy and liberation and release and joy, it raises the octave on the frequency of the pleasure, and you can feel it in every cell of your body. So working with your throat, opening your throat chakra. If you're someone who hasn't often made a lot of sounds during lovemaking, this is an opportunity to really liberate your voice and allow yourself to express that pleasure and share that with your voice to your beloved. And it's a beautiful, beautiful way to really let them know how exquisite of an experience you are having with them. And so those are the 11 steps. We went through it pretty quickly today because we just really wanted to touch on it and then give you the opportunity to dive more deeply by looking at the PDF, which will be included in the show notes. And if you would like to have access to those 2 video playlists, one is for women and one is for men, sacred sexual massage and tantric videos that I've collected over the years. And also I have a music playlist with a whole bunch of beautiful shamanic and healing kind of Reiki and really beautiful, gentle, heart-opening music. And I can send those resources over to you. I'm always collecting resources and always happy to share resources. And I would love to hear your feedback on this interview and anything that spoke to you. You can also find me on my website, premagaia.com.
Well, thank you so much. I know that it's for such a comprehensive, beautiful, container. That was a quick run through, but so powerful. Like even just going through those steps as it is, I think is such an amazing roadmap for me, for the listeners. So I really appreciate you sharing that. I have one last question before we go, which is just, if you could teach every single person out there one thing about sex or love or relationships you think would change the world, what would it be?
I love this question. The first thing that comes to mind and heart is approaching it with tenderness, and remembering that every being on this planet has such a courageous, beautiful heart for everything they've lived through, and everything we've all been through during our lifetimes, growing and healing, learning and evolving and exploring, falling in love and having our hearts broken and then opening to love again. So really to approach love and relationships with tenderness and gentleness and just deep reverence for the heart of the person that you are exploring with.
That's so beautiful. Well, thank you so much again for joining us today and for sharing that. And if you're listening, you can look down the show notes below for all the PDF she mentioned, and do get in touch with her for the playlists. Those are invaluable resources. They really, really are. Thank you so much again.
Thank you so much, Mia.
Thanks for joining and listening to this conversation. I hope you enjoyed it. And if you are single and you are ready for something better, do check out what I've built with Livette. We're offering a 3-month trial, and you can get a real sense for, how this is such a different kind of platform. It's 100% video, 100% vetted, like actual background checks, and 0% BS. We've even built in an amazing automated anti-ghosting system. I really designed Livette as a conscious response to so much of, I'd say the disruptive and antisocial behaviors I saw in dating. And so this is an amazing virtual social club where you can meet and play with people who are on the same page, playing by the same rules. It is so much fun inside. So if you're single and want to check it out, make sure you go to the show notes below and start your application.